People see Northport, people see even where Gwinnett plays, people see all these buildings in Arizona and Florida. That was not the minor leagues.
That was not the minor leagues.
So tell everybody early 70s.
Early 70s, in 1971 was my rookie year. I spent one whole year in the academy where we got there in 1970 and we just spent at 49 kids, they had to break them down to 28. And then we spent that whole year of 70 together playing baseball against colleges and minor league teams around the area.
Was Frank White part of that class?
Frank White was in the very first class with me. He was the shortstop and I was the catcher. And then we went to school. Matter of fact, we spent a year and a half at Manatee Junior College. We would go to school in the morning from 7 to 11. We would come back, have lunch, and then we would hit the classroom and then the baseball field.
Where do you get sent to after Sarasota?
I go to Waterloo, Iowa, my first year out of Sarasota in A-ball.
Okay.
And now, I've never seen a clubhouse like this. You walk into a clubhouse, it's haunted. That's how old it is. You know, you go on a baseball field, it's uneven. The dirt and the grass did not mesh. I mean, you had a hump coming off the grass, and you had to be alive for wild balls and stuff like that. But I was a catcher at the time. And my first year, I only hit 242, but I led the league in stolen bases as a catcher, as a leadoff hitter. And I found the first bat that I've ever used that I loved. When I first got into pro ball, I used Jackie Robinson. No knob on the end of it, big bat, choke, hit. But I found a Frank Robinson bat. It was called the R133. And when I picked that bat up, that's the only bat I ever used from 1972 till I retired.
Wow. I'm really asking, is that sort of, does the bat sing to you? Like people talk about you pick the bat or the bat picks you. It sounds to me like that bat picked you a little bit.
That bat picked me. When I picked that bat up, I realized as a 17-year-old kid that this is the model that I want because it felt good in my hand. I was a hands hitter. It felt good. The head was top heavy. Wasn't overly top heavy, but I could feel it. And it made me stop swinging with my arms, and I was able to start throwing my hands. And from that point on, my career started developing.
You talked about uneven fields. You're catching, but eventually you're going to be into the middle infield. Explain to people who's cutting the lawn, who's raking dirt, who's doing those things in the minor leagues back then.
There's about 3 guys when I played, and they worked for the recreational department in Waterloo, Iowa. They weren't the guys that took care of the field. They came over to take care of the field on game days when we were in town. When we wasn't in town, I guess the field just sit there because when we got back, that's when all the work started. You see them out there cutting the grass. You see them out there trying to even everything off. And it was only for the period of time we were home. So you played in some dangerous positions. And when I was in Waterloo, Iowa, I didn't have enough money to have an apartment. We had to live with families. Yeah, and I lived in basements. I used to catch the rapid transit in Waterloo, Iowa to the ballpark because I didn't get a bonus. I didn't have a car. You know, I wasn't one of those guys. So that's what I used to do. I used to figure out ways that I could get to the ballpark. IHOP, they had an IHOP in that town. I would go to that IHOP, I would eat breakfast. I would eat breakfast late, say about 11 o'clock. I would sign for my breakfast until payday, and then I would come back and pay them. I got to know the manager. You know, I told him who I was and what my purpose was, and he would let me come there and eat, and I would just pay him on payday.
So do you look back at that and realize, look, there are baseball towns and communities where that might happen. That doesn't happen anymore for about 50 different reasons. But are you aware of, to make this, I'm going to need help? Like, I'm going to need this family. I'm going to need the guy who runs IHOP. There are things and people that you need to put you in a position where you can worry about the baseball as much as you're supposed to worry about.
I found out as a youngster, you don't get anything if you don't open your mouth. I wasn't certain that the manager at IHOP was going to let me eat there, but I went up in there with a cause. And I explained to him what I was doing and what my financial status was. And I mean, if you are forthright with people, people will help you. And I was forthright, and the guy, he just took a liking to me, and he did it. I would go there and eat. And I wouldn't overdo it. I would go there and eat breakfast. I never went there for dinner. You know, I knew breakfast was it because we got our little meal at the ballpark, which was bag lunch. It wasn't hot meals like it is today. It was bag lunch.
Do you remember the name of the family that took you in there?
No, I can't go back that far.
But when you think about then, again, it's a baseball community. That's part of what happens. You're away from home. You're an adult because you've handled yourself. You've been around adults. But you look around and you go, this is the only way I'm capable of staying here, is to be with this family.
Well, it was the only way that I was able to survive.
Right.
You know, some guys live with other players. During that period of time, I'm not saying racism was real prevalent, but the white guys on that team, they didn't try to find out how you were doing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a competition, and then there's the...
They didn't know any better.
Kind of. You hate to say it, but it's kind of everybody's trying to get to the next level.
And they were only concerned about themselves.
Worry about me.
And I was the kind of person that I worried about everybody else that was involved in what I had to do. That's what made me who I am today, because I cared about people. I didn't have a whole lot, but I was willing to share what I had. And there were some guys, I can tell you, they wasn't willing to share their prosperity. And it never bothered me because I've always been self-sufficient. That's why I learned the transit system in Waterloo, Iowa. I learned how to get where I had to go. I made sure that a meal, I was able to get it, even if it was just one a day. Because, I mean, I wasn't making any money. I wasn't a bonus baby. If I'd have got some bonus money, that would have been different. And the rent at the time was $380, $350 a month, which wasn't a whole lot in today's standard, but it was a heck of a lot in that standard because I was only making $550 a month. You see what I'm saying? My check would come, it's $280 something, $300 and something dollars. I'm gonna pay $300 a month rent out of that, and I was married at the time, and my wife is at home. You see what I'm saying? So what I did is I made certain that whatever monies I had, I sent home. I survived off of what I could. That's what I did. Baseball was my food.
Right, and by the way, it's sort of what you try to instill in your kids. Book smarts are great, street smarts are better. Figure out how you're going to put yourself in a position the right way with the right attitude and make it beneficial. It's funny about Iowa. Let's just say there's a drought, 12-day drought. It's not like they're out there watering fields every day. We're talking about, again, what people need to understand is when you're talking about the minor leagues, it's pretty now.
It's real pretty now.
A nail. I mean, are you in a place where my pants are going to go on a nail? My locker is this big. You told me, what did you have? You had a little box?
Had a little box, metal lockers. You really could only fit your body in it, and if you was a big guy, you couldn't fit your body in it, because when we had downtime, you see guys sitting inside the locker. I mean, their butts were inside the locker, and their legs was hanging out the locker, and shoulders were barely in, and you had to wash your own clothes. You had to wash your own clothes. Your uniform, you had to wash it. There weren't no clubhouse guys.
Bins, toss it in, leave.
No. You had to do that. You had to do that yourself.
Can I ask something? So years later, when the world changes in terms of there's money, there's locker rooms, when maybe even as a player towards the end of your career, certainly as a coach, I mean, would you be one of those guys who was pissed if somebody just dropped something in the middle of the floor in the locker room, knowing that, come on?
It doesn't bother me because we got so many guys picking it up.
Okay.
But it bothers me in the sense that you need to handle your own business.
Right.
There's a place for you to put that stuff, but I'm not just going to put it on this generation. But when you got people catering to you, this generation do accept that cater. My generation still pick my stuff up and put it where it's supposed to be.
Were you amazed when you get to the bigs? They water the fields. They rake them. There has to be a certain moment when you go, oh, this is why people want to stay here.
Before I made it to the big leagues, I ended up having an opportunity to play in some nice places. I mean, Albuquerque, New Mexico was where the Dodgers were. You know, Toledo, Ohio, that's where the Minnesota Twins were. I played in Rochester, New York. That's where the Baltimore Orioles were. That's when I was in AAA. Double A, I played at St. Mary's College in San Antonio, Texas. So, I mean, as I got closer to the big leagues, the fields and the prep got better. When I say prep, I'm talking about the clubhouses. They did get better. And when I finally got to the big leagues, actually the Dodger Stadium was those metal lockers.
Built in the 60s.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had urinals where right by the dugout, the running urinals.
Yes.
So, but it was still better than where I came.
Yeah.
Today, it's 100% different.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I remember, I tell people all the time, West Palm, where the Braves and the Expos were when I first started, there was like a chain link fence, and you stepped over it, and you were like in the facility. No security, no nothing. It was just kind of like this chain link fence, this low was the separation between the parking lot, and there was none of that going on these days.
No, not today.
Yeah.
Not
I want to
today.
finish up with this. When you get the call that you're going to go up to LA, and by the way, when you're talking about LA, we'll talk about this another time. The former players, the guys from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, who I'm sure you saw. We'll talk about how that sort of plays out coming up this year. But when you get the call up, when you realize you've busted your hump, you're beat odds. I'm a catcher. I'm 138 pounds. Well, it's all against you. I got to live with families because I got to make sure my wife and we can survive. You got a lot of stuff going against you. When you find out, who tells you that you're going up?
Mr. Sweppy. He was the minor league director for the Dodgers at the time. You look at Ronald Acuna. When we first saw him, when he first came to camp the first time, it was my first year here in 17, and everybody talked about how great he was. But his first big league camp, he wasn't so great. But you could see he got it.